Welcome to Season 2 of Legal Tech Briefs, where we explore the intersection of innovation, law, and the technology shaping the future of business and law. Today, we're diving into one of the most significant structural shifts in legal services, and it's really the ability for non-lawyers to participate in the profits from the business of law. Joining me are two friends, Tom Greenaway from KPMG Law US, which if I zoom out and just like having those two words together, KPMG and law, like 10 years ago, would have never thought this was humanly possible. And Crispin Passmore, who's been a key figure for the past 20 years in making this entire structural shift happen. Through KPMG, Tom's building a scalable legal services across both the US and across the globe. And Crispin, day to day, is working directly with global regulators, investors, and law firms to design and implement reform. Crispin's on the front line of all this stuff. We are honored to call Crispin. I am honored to call him a friend, a mentor, a partner of ours, an advisor, to our entire fund and all the activities we're doing. But I think he has a special fondness for the Legal Tech Lab, which is focusing on the earliest stage companies that are out there. So maybe a little bit of framing to the conversation. In the past directionally 5 years, we've seen different states take different actions in the US. It's resulted with what we're tracking of about 147 new entities that have been effectively given permission to operate under an alternative business structure or an ABS. These 147 entities, from the numbers that I got, have delivered more than 117,000 legal engagements to date, and there have only been 22 complaints. This is a small sample. We're early, but we think it's a heck of a signal. And I think maybe to start this conversation, we should start with some history. And we're fortunate enough to have Crispin on the line here, and there's no better place to explain to how we got to where we are than somebody like Crispin. And maybe Crispin, I know you did a lot in the 2007 time period, but maybe if you zoom back to, you tell us where the journey starts. If it starts in way before that,
yeah, way before. It's an honor to be here with both of you. Great friends, and people like me can try and plough fields and knock down hedges and make the land right for cultivation, but it's guys like you and businesses like yours that are actually making it happen. So, thanks for the invitation. You can go back as far as you want. You can go back to, pre the current regulatory environment where it was much more open in most jurisdictions. The restrictions that we have in place are actually the last 100, 125 years in lots of places. But the opening up, Australia was first 25 years ago. Small scale, but significant. But the UK opening up of the legal market to allow non-lawyer ownership of law firms, ABSs, was put through in the 2007 legislation, the Legal Services Act. And that came out of a government-sponsored report investigation into competition in the professions in the UK. A big industry and a big export for the UK professional services still is, how do you increase competition? And increasing capital into the market through investment was a key recommendation from that. And that leads over time to government activity, legislation, and eventually in 2011, 2012, the first ABSs in the UK. Since then, the world has watched and some things have happened. It's not been Big Bang. It was never going to be Big Bang. But, there's probably 1,500 ABSs operating in England and Wales now out of 9,000 law firms. And perhaps, who knows the exact numbers, 25, 30%, 35% of new law firms are ABSs, have some sort of non-lawyer ownership. And it ranges from everything from a solo practitioner bringing in their husband and wife for tax reasons, right the way through to global law firms, global professional services firms like Tom's KPMG, and everything in behind. The theme for me is multidisciplinary practice, and perhaps we'll talk about that a bit more. Over the last 5-6 years, it's been a debate in the US much more. Lots of states have thought about this, but the influence of the lawyer monopoly, the lawyer guild, is still significant. And it took the brave state of Arizona to really open this up and allow ABSs 4 or 5 years ago. And now we have the 150 odd you talk about, but we also have a much greater awareness of other models that can be used. So we're on a bumpy road, but it's a one-way street towards more liberalisation and more capital in the legal market.
Tom, maybe help provide some background as to your history with KPMG and their interest. Why would a public accounting firm, a Big Four, think about this?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. And as Crispin said, it's wonderful to join you and be among friends here and to talk about these really important issues that are very exciting. So, as Crispin said, KPMG, like other firms, wants to provide as comprehensive a set of professional services as we can to our clients so that we can allow our clients to solve the business problems they have unencumbered by the various disciplines. So whether it's a valuation issue or a tax issue or an accounting issue or a legal issue, we want to bring the right teams to bear on that business problem or opportunity. And that's why we want to do it.
And what does this look like? So maybe a little history in KPMG, like when did you start thinking about this? When did this come to fruition?
Yeah, it's a great question, Zach. So as Crispin noted, Arizona opened up the possibility, at least in the U.S., for a firm like KPMG to start a law firm. I should note, and many in the U.S. don't appreciate, that KPMG has a very large and mature legal services network around the world. We practice law in 85 jurisdictions around the world with almost 4,000 attorneys in our global network. And we all practice under the KPMG brand through our member firm network. But the U.S., of course, was the largest gap in that network, given it was and it is the largest market for legal services in the world. But as mentioned, we could have asked the permission of the Supreme Court of Arizona back in 2020 to take the step that we took this year. But we didn't for two reasons. Number one, we wanted to be confident that the regulatory regime evolved in the manner we expected, and it has. It's proved to be very durable. So that's important for us. And more importantly, though, is we wanted to make sure that when we came to market, we could deliver quality that's as good as or better than existing legal service providers. And one of the keys for that is how quickly the technology that supports our professionals has evolved and continues to evolve. And so now we stand proud and ready to serve the legal services market here in the U.S., supported by an enormous, number one, our global network, number two, our ways of working and our people and our teams, but just as important, the significant investments we've made in technology to support all of our businesses. And now, of course, those investments in technology can be brought to bear on the legal services market as well.
Crispin, hearing that and seeing the UK, what's happened over there up close, what's working, what's not?
So I mentioned this in the first question earlier. Yeah, I think the real theme across the world is multidisciplinary. And it doesn't really matter where you come at it from, which bit of the legal market you look at. Law firms, because of their siloed nature, they tend to focus on offering and selling legal expertise and time. But actually what clients have are life problems. Whether you're an individual client, a small business, or a global corporation, you have problems of life of you and your business, and they need multidisciplinary toolkits to solve those problems, because it's about resolving issues, managing risk, those sorts of things. And that, I think, leads to a professional services market solution. From dealing with a divorce, it's about adding in financial services products or real estate products. For a corporate service, it's about putting tax and legal and consulting around each other. Wherever you look in the legal market, actually law on its own isn't as strong as law with other services. And the ABS model and money into law firms really allows those wider solutions. And I think that's the real theme of this.
So any big warning signs you give the regulators? Or, everybody's mind, whenever a law changes, a technology comes out, people's mind goes to the worst human place it can. Like I remember when Airbnb came out around the same time in 2007, people were saying you'll get murdered if you stay in somebody's apartment. But I don't think there's many murders, and I think I teased some of those stats. Like, I'm just curious, is it?
We're early days in Arizona. We're a few years in, but as you said, with your complaints numbers, the signs are pretty good. But we're nearly 15 years in England and Wales, and there's lots of independent research that's been done, and it says some very clear things. It says that ABSs tend to be better at handling consumer dissatisfaction because perhaps they're better run businesses and they've got a stronger focus on consumers rather than clients. Just the phraseology matters. More innovation. Independent research says more innovation in ABSs than traditional law firms. And as an ex or recovered regulator, I would say, my clear insight from being inside these regulators is, once you've done this for a while, whether there's lawyers or non-lawyers owning the business is just utterly irrelevant when you're looking for predictors of what might go wrong. What goes wrong is criminals steal money, and we know that there's some lawyer criminals out there, and that incompetence can come from all sorts of directions, and bad business decisions normally lead to bad outcomes. Whether it's lawyer-owned or non-lawyer owned really is just utterly irrelevant. And I think every jurisdiction is gradually going to find that out.
Tom, one of the things, we've talked about is this construct of outside capital, but I'm guessing KPMG's first priority for this was not outside capital. I'm sure their balance sheet can handle, some investment in this area. But do you think this is about funding, or do you look at this completely different, saying, no, it's a different paradigm?
So, Zach, it's a great question. So the business imperatives are what's driving the changes here. So from our perspective, we have been engaged. And by the way, KPMG sits in an incredibly competitive market, and we're delighted to compete in that market. But the market in which we sit and and in which we operate for decades has challenged us to deliver more efficient and more effective services for years. And we've responded to those challenges, as many of our competitors have. And our clients have asked us to share with them the fruits of some of those efficiencies. And we have, again, because we live in a competitive market. And so at a very general level, the businesses that we serve are moving faster and doing more than they were even 5 years ago. And if you isolate the traditional legal services model with a professional with an inbox and an outbox, that model just doesn't work at the speed at which business is operating and the scale at which business is operating in the global markets we serve.
Tom, Crispin, I know you guys are both keeping an eye on this at a broader level, but like what types of companies or constructs are applying for ABS? Like, what are you guys seeing applying for ABSs? Or Tom, who I'm sure, just as as somebody leading the pack here, you get calls from lots of folks that just want to have a better understanding as to what and why. But who are the calls coming from these days?
Yeah, so fortunately, Crispin has been a wonderful ambassador to this world for us, and he's helped foster a bunch of those connections. But you're right, Zach, the questions are coming from all participants in the market. First and foremost, of course, clients have been asking for greater efficiencies and better quality in their legal services, and we're happy to take those calls and serve those needs. But also attorneys. There are professionals, whether they're as a firm as a whole, or groups of attorneys coming to us to say, yeah, this is a better platform for us to serve our clients in the way that we want to. Let's talk about either, renting your platform or co-counseling with you, or, buying your services on a white label that we can deliver through to our clients, or just individual attorneys saying this is a better mousetrap here that we see. But also, and this maybe turns the corner to the capital side, we are also taking calls from private equity and other investors who see what we're doing and see the other models that are in the marketplace and just view us as one way to deliver innovation to this market. And Crispin and Zach, you guys have perhaps a better perspective than I do on some of the other changes, which was kind of a surprise to me that were already happening, kind of the friendly lawyer structures and MSOs and other things that are quite different than what we're doing here at KPMG, but all pointed at solving the same.
Maybe to just add that to the question to Crispin. So Crispin, who's calling, and maybe go into a little bit of the MSO construct of what does that mean, and how does that compare to the ABS?
Who's calling? Well, many more people than a year ago. If you'd asked me that 12 months ago, I would have said I get 3, 4, 5 calls a month, and that's stepped up and is accelerated hugely since Christmas. I probably have calls with technology businesses, alternative providers, law firms, big and small, and investors, big and small, 8-10 times a week now to talk about what the opportunity is and what they might want to do. Sometimes they'll come and say, we want to set up an ABS. Sometimes they will say, we want to raise money or we want to deploy money. I always try and take them back, something Tom always says about, start with the strategy, the decision of whether or not the right form is an ABS or an MSO, which I'll explain in a sec, follows from that. Whether you need money follows from that. Don't start with the answer, start with the right question. So in those conversations, we try and work through what it is the business wants to achieve. Is it growth? Is it exit? Is it technology? Is it attract and retain talent? And once you're clear on that, you can work out what the right structure is. And there's ways of making an Arizona ABS work nationwide across the US, all 50 states, even California, by mixing them with other models, using staffing, lawyers, using co-counsel. There's different things that you can do there. But an MSO model is really a model lifted from other professional services, started in healthcare, and it separates the economics from the practice of a profession from the professional practice itself. We've seen it in doctors, veterinary, dentistry, engineering, I think, and over the last few years, a real acceleration of it around accounting and consulting as well. And that has brought a focus of it into law. So you keep the lawyers in a lawyer-owned business practicing law, but you move the heart, the guts, the economics of the law firm into a service company, which isn't practicing law and doesn't need to be regulated. It doesn't need to be owned by lawyers. And you take your investment into that and drive that into the law firm to deliver growth. There's some complexity around that. You've got to avoid fee sharing. You've got to avoid practice of law. But they're doing the same thing, whether it's ABS or MSO or some combination. You're just trying to separate the economics from the practice of law so that you can raise some money. And why does that matter? Well, I think the thing that's amazing about the legal market is these law firms have been so big and so successful when they distribute their balance sheet to zero every year. That gets harder and harder as you need technology, long-term horizon, and stickiness with your talent. Attracting and retaining talent isn't a distribute to zero at the year end and start again. Because if you'll start at zero at the year end, well, they could go somewhere else who promises a bigger distribution next year. So you've got to try and create long-term incentive plans, even if you're talking about your new lawyers or your rainmakers in the biggest firms. You need stickiness, and equitization allows you to do that. Capital balance sheet allows you to do that. So it's just about trying to find out what's the strategy, what's the problem we're trying to solve, what's the right structure, and do we need external money?
Maybe just to close out, because we're popping up against time here. To both of you, and I think we'll get different perspectives on this, but I mean, what should legal leaders, innovators, what should they be paying attention to? What are the opportunities? What are the signals? What are you guys excited about? And maybe Tom, just from your perspective first, just as an operator, day in and day out, and then Crispin, would love it if you could close this up.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. So maybe just to bounce off of what Crispin said, I mean, it's really fun to be part of a startup inside of a large, global professional services network, which is all made up of professional services partnerships. So I've got the benefit of working shoulder to shoulder with partners in a partnership model, right? We don't take outside money at KPMG, and we're very comfortable. We love the market economy, and we definitely have a good and strong relationship with all our regulators. So that mix is perfect for us. The one thing I would say, which sounds cliche, but it's really, really true, the pace of change is surprising. So even deals that we are negotiating now, the economics are changing in favor of those who can deliver technology faster. And when I say faster, I'm not talking about years. I'm not even talking about months. I'm talking about weeks. So the changes that are coming through are coming through very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think I sort of pose different questions to different people. If you're a tech business, what would it take for you to be able to turn your technology to face the customer directly rather than through a law firm? What investment do you need? What strategy? What structure? To law firms, I would say, don't ask yourself whether or not this is what you want. Ask yourself what you're going to do when your biggest competitor does this. And to investors, I would say, the time's now. Some of you missed out on accounting. Don't miss out on law.
Yeah, I think there was we were at an offsite, an event that we had hosted last week, and it was I think the stat that blew me away is 5 years ago, there was zero outside investment in accounting firms in the US. And I think right now, 30 of the top 100 have received some form of outside investment. I can't thank you both enough for taking some time to be with us and for both being friends of the fund. Looking forward to seeing you both soon. And thank you guys for spending a few minutes with us and sharing some insights.
Thanks, Zach.